Hey, I wanted to jump in here and let you know that we have an introductory pricing going on right now up until May 18th. And what this is I have taken my courses and combined them all into a Move Better bundle. So you're going to be working on your feet, you're going to be working on your posture, and you're going to be working on your core, pelvic floor, all of those things, and you can save big. Right now, I am selling this for 50% off. So head to movingthroughmidlife.com. Click on the Work With Me link. It is the Moving Through Midlife program, your Move Better bundle, where you can start working on feeling better in your body. You also then get access to workouts, recipe guides, live sessions with me, and live classes with me throughout the month. So head to movingthroughmidlife.com, click on the Move With Me link, enter intro, and that will give you 50% off. I'm looking forward to it. Welcome to Moving Through Midlife. I am your host, Courtney, a personal trainer and movement specialist who wants to help you move through midlife with more grace. Each week, we will discuss ways we can show up better for ourselves and our children without the burnout. We will focus on overall health through habit stacking to help increase energy, provide movement snacks to help you move more throughout the day while also moving your body more, and learn from professionals on moving through midlife with ease so that you can feel confident with aging gracefully. Grab your earbuds and join me on a leisurely walk while we discuss moving through midlife. Today, I am speaking with the period whisperer, Bria. She is a holistic health coach and certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who specializes in female hormones, helping women with weight release and energy gain in pre and post menopause, and finding clarity in hormonal chaos. We spoke about signs of perimenopause. We also spoke about if you are struggling with heavy periods, what you can do for that. She also shared with us something that she didn't expect to be dealing with when she went through perimenopause, and so much more. I hope you get a lot out of this conversation and enjoy. Hi, Bria. How are you?
Hi, Courtney. I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. How are you?
I am great. I'm excited to be able to speak with you because you are known as the period whisperer. So, can you tell me a little bit about that and why you are called the period whisperer?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of two main reasons, but I'll give you the quick story was that I spent, the earlier part of my career as a trainer and nutrition coach, and when I was raising my young kids. And then around the age of 35, I started to notice a shift in my clients in like how they were feeling, what was going on, like energy, results, things like that. And then around 37, it started to happen to me. And, it started a little bit like, oh, I'm just tired all the time, or, my cravings are picking. I wasn't getting results from my fitness anymore. I gained what I call undeserved weight, when we're like, I'm doing the same things and I'm gaining weight. And I started to have some changes to my period. And the real kick, which I think is always a sign we should go and get checked out. I think that's a big one. But the kicker that kind of pushed it over the edge was I stopped sleeping really well. And I was waking up every night in these night sweats. And that's what kind of, drove me to my healthcare practitioner, who was amazing and did all the things. And just kind of looked at me and was like, you're the picture of health. And I'm sure you can understand some of this, like with whether it's the clients you've worked with or your story, but when you are told you're healthy and you don't feel healthy and you
Mhm.
thought you'd had that piece figured out, as a trainer, I'm like, I don't have everything figured out, but I thought I had this piece figured out. It was a real like dark moment, when
Mhm.
you're like, okay, if this is the best I'm gonna feel, like what's actually happening? I don't know about the next 40 years. And that was what kind of, encouraged me to start really looking more deeply at like women's health and more specifically, like, okay, what's going on with my period? Why am I having really heavy periods? Why are they less regular? Why is my PMS increasing? And all of that kind of drove me down this path to better understanding what is happening in a woman's body and how we don't necessarily listen to the whispers of our body. So the name the period whisper comes from two places. One, it comes from just teaching us how to actually listen to the messages that definitely our period and cycle give us, but of course the rest of our body give us too. And the other one is more, fun. My second was young, he had a hard time sleeping, and I read this book, The Baby Whisperer, it was called. It's such a good book. I'm sure a lot of people have read it. And she had this beautiful acronym, EASY, which was eat, activity, sleep, you time. And it's such a fundamental way for us to like very easily bring ourselves back to health, is by like thinking about this acronym, not just for our babies, but for ourselves. So it was very inspiring to me. And that's how I got
Okay,
here.
perfect. I love it. I love the name. I love everything about it. And I think it is key, like you mentioned, to be able to listen to your body.
Yeah,
And one of those key things for us women, where we get to see our overall health, which I don't think many women realize, is how you are bleeding. What
yes.
is everything like? Because that is a huge telltale sign of your overall health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's almost like an early check engine light sign. And, the amount of blood, the symptoms that we're having, like the if it's irregular, what part of the cycle that is as our energy changes. Then when we start to understand that, it's kind of this like beautiful user's manual into getting ahead of the game before things get further downstream.
Can you tell us what were some of the things that you noticed, or maybe even that you have clients? What are some of those things that you start to notice that are changing at about that 37, 38-year range?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's always important to know, like, those are sort of the earlier years of perimenopause, we call them. And I think what I'd love for most women to understand is that there's a few things happening during that time, but first and foremost is actually that the role of our hormones is being transitioned from our ovaries to our adrenals. And that's really key, because if your adrenals are taxed doing other things with other hidden stressors in the body or stressors in life or both, then we're going to start to see symptoms show up a lot faster and a lot more fiercely. And when we understand that, I think it can take a little bit more under or clarity for ourselves, or compassion around, it's not necessarily the amount of hormones, which will start to decrease a little bit later, but that's a big transition, like any transition. So, with regards to your period, we can start to, have them, missing periods or coming more closely together. We can start to have changes in flow, in amount of flow, in color of flow, and certainly an increase in like what we would expect to be typical, premenstrual symptoms. But I would say some of the most common symptoms I hear from people is struggling in sleep, for sure, night sweats, or even some hot flashes, digestive issues and bloating, even skin issues, like feeling like you're aging really, really quickly. Incontinence even can start to be something we experience. And anxiety and depression even. I think this like mood shifts inside of us, and we quickly, I think culture teaches us to quickly blame our hormones, and of course they play a really important role, but it's often from other things that are impacting our hormones, especially in like 35 to 45, 46, 47. Those are the big things that are starting to happen. Is that your experience?
Most definitely. It's so interesting for me personally because I started dealing with symptoms probably 37, 38, like you mentioned, had
Yeah.
no clue. Went to my doctor, heavy, heavy periods. And he was like, I don't know. He didn't really have anything to say. He was just kind of like, this is the way it is. And I love my doctor. He's great. But it was just something that I felt like I had to push through. And it wasn't until I was probably 43 or 44 when I started learning more about hormones and that I was actually probably in perimenopause.
Yeah.
He did not say perimenopause.
Yeah.
I just started kind of learning from others
Yeah.
about it. And, it has just progressively things have gotten easier. I do know for myself, which maybe you could speak into this. When I loved sugar all my life, I never had a problem with sugar. I could eat it. I knew that if I worked out, whatever, it'd be fine. Hit my 40s, no longer working for
Not
me.
fine.
Definitely started noticing the
Yeah.
effects of it. Definitely felt this much more blood sugar roller coaster. Night sweats, like you mentioned, hot flashes, things like that. When I pulled back on the sugar, a lot of that personally went away for me. And I did notice a decrease in the flow of blood as well that I was dealing with.
Mhm.
So, what would you say with that? Is that something that you notice with your clients, that what we're eating? Because my doctor didn't say anything about, like, hey, what are you eating? How are you eating?
And I
That.
mean, of course, all the love for our doctors, for sure. They have a very important job. And their job is to help you when you're sick. But perimenopause is not a diagnosable condition. Like bloating is not a diagnosable condition. All these things are not, but they are really clear signs that you're headed that way. And
Right.
so when we pay attention, and so I think for you, I think there's always this question for a lot of women, like, why is what I've always done no longer working? And I think a great way to understand that is recognizing that pretty much our body is born with, like, almost like a bank account, like beautiful trust fund of energy. And of course, as we go through time, that we draw down on that energy. I mean, we increase the energy through quality, the right food that provides energy, through sleep, of course, through functional movement, and putting on muscle. Will Once we've got the muscle, we'll create energy, and through pleasure and stress management. But as we go through life, these 35, 40, 45 years, we experience traumatic, things that draw down on our energy that then stick with us. We experience injury, which draws down, and illness and sickness. And there's a compound effect of things like sugar or food. And I like to look at it like perimenopause is kind of like a big, beautiful highlighter that sort of comes in to highlight the things that aren't rolling for you. And it's not that sugar was okay for you and now it's not. We know sugar is inflammatory. We know it's not okay for us, but youth is forgiving. We've got that trust fund, and we kind of hit this point. And when perimenopause comes in, it's like you're about to go, move states or move countries or move provinces. Like, it's more work for your body. And so things start to kind of slip through those cracks. And what we can know about for you, when we think like this heavy period stuff, is pretty is often common. And although there are many reasons for it, the most common, I would say, is what we call like an excess of estrogen or an imbalanced estrogen and progesterone. Some people call it
Okay.
estrogen dominance. And there's these two of our main sex hormones are symbiotic in nature, meaning if there's not enough of one, there's too much of the other. And progesterone is really, I've heard someone call it the shy hormone. Like, it's really sensitive to anything stressful. And sugar is stressful, alcohol is stressful on the body, or like any of these things that spike cortisol. So when we're going through a stress, whether it's internal, the things we're eating, or external, the things we're going through, it's going to suppress our progesterone and increase our estrogen. And that's when we start to see really heavy periods, too much estrogen, really dark color, clotty, things like that. And the other thing to understand, I think, through that is that if we have a hormone imbalance, if we're having these heavy periods, chances are your liver's also backed up.
Mm.
So because its job is to metabolize these, and it's clearly not able to do that, and that's why we have these heavy periods. So we know there's now a loss of function in more than just our hormones. Something else is causing this loss of function. That was a long-winded answer, but to try to get to your last piece around, like, when you stopped eating sugar, the periods got more regular or better. Is that what you said? Yeah, because you've given your body the space to heal on its own by removing a stressor.
So,
Yeah.
what would you recommend for, because, this is a time when there are a ton of ups and downs and trying to figure out what our body needs. And what I've noticed, I'm now almost 49, and what I needed just 3 years ago is very different. I would say this year, not that I've hit like a brick wall, not in that sense, but I and maybe it's just that I'm listening to my body better. Maybe that's what it is I finally appreciate what it's telling me. But I have started to notice that there are certain things that I can't do anymore. because I feel very different when if I'm not getting a good night's sleep. If I tend to overeat sugar and carbs one day, I will feel wrecked the next day. So, what are some things that you recommend for women who are on this kind of path of trying to figure everything out?
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I like to kind of bring it again back to that example of like this energy reserve. If we know that the majority of of us pulling away from homeostasis, pulling away from this beautiful balance in our body has everything to do with this energy reserve. And it's a real energy supply and demand issue. So I think first we want to kind of take a good look at what is drawing down from our energy in life that we can control. I mean, it can be difficult, of course, to control career stress or even relationship stress. And we certainly can't change the fact that we're going through perimenopause. But we can, for those three, we can always like work on stress management for those pieces. And I think it's talked about more, but it's overlooked in our everyday life. But we can control the workouts that we're doing, which cause a lot, so I love that you shared that about the things that can't tolerate the same. I've noticed like I cannot work out the way I used to work out. It's too much on my body. And I also need to work out very cyclically. I need to be aware of what phase I'm in and work out according. Otherwise, I'll run out of the energy I need to be patient in a day, to accomplish the things that I want. So we want to take a good look at what are all the things that are drawing down on our energy in the day, our stress, and of course, foods that we're eating that suck energy more than provide. So that's where we're going to see the sugar, the caffeine, the alcohol, often the dairy and the gluten, the things that, we know aren't really hidden stressors. We know they're like more obvious stressors. And we can go more deeply, of course, into looking into like food sensitivities and understand what else might be drawing down. So that's my first step is we want to look at what's sucking our energy and what can we start saying no to, set some boundaries up, change and modify. We don't have to stop working out. Of course, we want to move, as you so beautifully help us with in your podcast. But we want to make sure it's in line with what our body's asking for right now. What does it need? And those listening to our body. And then the other side of it is like, how do we increase our energy supply? And I think that there's really just four ways we get energy in life. One is through our sleep, which I realize is tricky because if your sleep starts to be interrupted, I mean, in midlife, it's not usually our kids waking us up anymore, or it's us. So, but we need to create space for our sleep to happen. We need to have like, a decent bedtime routine where we're bringing ourselves into a calm state and we're not watching zombie shows, right before we go to bed, driving up that cortisol, right? I say this from personal experience. We need to be in that bed for a certain amount of hours and have like just good sleep hygiene. So that's one of the most important ways, of course. The second is going to absolutely be our nutrition. So as I said, there's foods that, that we can eat, but don't provide, they take more than they give. And I think that's a helpful way to look at a lot of, a lot of these things like sugar and alcohol and caffeine that can be hard to give up because in the moment they give us something, but in the end they're taking more than they give. And then we're drawing down. And I will say on that, like, and you might agree with me on this, like there's no doubt in my mind that sometimes going out and having drinks with friends might draw down in some areas, but just literally fills my soul cup. And so if that's for you once in a while or once a week, that's okay. But when we're dealing with this deficit, we want to be aware of like, okay, how do I bring this up? The third, of course, is functional movement, which I love that you share about, and when I think about functional movement, it's like, it's going to be things like just getting your 7 to 10,000 steps in each day. That's like expanding and stretching your body. These things provide just as much, if not more energy than they take. Whereas, there are times in life where, doing a high intensity interval training workout or even lifting really heavy weights, although it might eventually turn into gains right now, is too much drawdown on what we have in our reserve. So it's actually going to do more damage than good. And finally, we want to look at, our stress pleasure pillar in life. And I tie them together because everyone knows, like, if you're stressed, I mean, there's no room for pleasure. No one's having an orgasm when they're stressed out or even interested. Nobody's, you can't even laugh at a comedy show. Like nobody can take a joke when they're stressed out, right? So So we want to take a look at like, how am I managing my stress in the day? And it can be as simple as just like breathing a little before you eat or singing in the car. Like it doesn't have to be a 10, 20, 30-minute meditation. It can be little things to stimulate that vagus nerve. And then how do I find pleasure and joy in my life every day, not just every 6 weeks when we go on vacation, or 8 months ago when you went to that concert. Like every day we need to find little joy, at least, if not more. So
Yes.
does that help?
Most definitely. And when you're saying this, I mean, I'm thinking of all the little things where I might need to improve, but are very difficult. With that first piece, when you said the alcohol and the coffee, I love, like, it is ceremonial for me with my coffee in the morning, but I
Ceremonial.
also know that it may not be doing me the best.
But is it
I
just
just
one
can't even
coffee or
admit it. I know that it is not good for me. I can feel it. If I don't eat with drinking coffee, I can tell something's not right in my body right after.
yeah.
Um, do you have tips to help people move through that?
Totally. And I will tell you right now, I have one coffee a day and I really appreciate that quiet moment alone with my, like, there's no doubt about it. So I don't, although sure, in a perfect world, it might be ideal to not have any caffeine because it does, again, it's a drawdown on our hormonal and the function of our body. I don't think we all need to be like that vanilla necessarily in life. I think we can find little joys, here and there. And so what I would say is if you do want to get rid of it, like switching to like cutting back to half calf, or even switching to
Mm,
some of these beautiful mushroom coffees out there that have adaptogens, they'll have a lower caffeine level. They'll give you that, a similar experience, and hopefully cut, like I get terrible caffeine headaches if I don't have my daily coffee as well, and a lot of people
okay.
do. So
Okay.
you suffer for 3 days if you go cold turkey. So I would
Mhm.
say there's one option. But the other, I always like to say, and I say this to my clients, like, one, definitely don't have it on an empty stomach. So if you're having it with your breakfast, I'd say you're absolutely winning because it dilutes that impact of cortisol rush in your body. So that's a really powerful piece. And maybe consider having, like, if in your breakfast, have a couple of Brazil nuts. If you have two Brazil nuts, we get the full amount of selenium that our thyroid needs every single day. So
Okay.
it's a simple little thing, like add it if you're someone who is drinking coffee on an empty stomach, like just two Brazil nuts, maybe a couple berries, like so that it kind of settles in there and it lowers that, like really percolates down, we'll call it, that impact. And then it also is nourishing you in some other way. So you're getting added nourishment with the thing. It's like drinking on it. We shouldn't drink on an empty stomach. When we drink with food, it really it makes it a lower impact situation on our body.
Perfect. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that
Yeah.
tip, and I'm going to actually go practice it because I don't want to give I don't want to give my coffee up. And I don't drink a ton. I mean, it is two and we're done. Like I
Beautiful.
cannot do more than two, or I definitely will feel the effects of it. Also, you mentioned the movement, and that's another thing that I am really, I've been in the fitness industry for
Yeah.
almost, for a lot of time now, and it's very hard when you have been known to be something, and the way your body feels when doing those things no longer, they don't feel good anymore. I'll wake up with aches and pains. I don't feel like you said something that's filling your cup and you're getting energy from, or something that's dragging you down. And I can say I definitely feel dragged down
Yeah.
after exercising. And I also understand that if it's just, if you're only dealing with the one, it may not be the situation. So if I could pull every other stressor out, I may
Yes.
not feel that way. So
Yes.
I don't want to just say it's specifically this, but what can you recommend? I like how you mentioned the, walking and stretching and that type of thing. Is that what you recommend to women and your clients when it comes to movement if they
Yeah.
aren't able to move like they used to?
Yeah, I love that question. It's great. And I completely relate to what you're saying because as I think as someone with a fitness background, like I was really wrapped up in that identity. It was a part of who I am. And to separate, it's like, well, who am I if I'm not doing these workouts every single day or whatever, right? It was a real part of how I'd even manage stress. I didn't realize it was drawing down on it the same way. So it's a great question. And I always think the number one goal, I think, for our health, and our relationship with our body is always to listen. What is my body saying to me? Because it doesn't matter who you are as an expert. Like you are going to know your body better than anyone, and you want to know your body better than anyone else. So, but I would say one, if you're dealing with a hormone imbalance or you're dealing with dysfunction somewhere in your body, so you're experiencing symptoms, right? So anything that's you're not sleeping, you can't lose weight, you're not getting results from your workouts. That's a good sign there. We're dealing with energy issues, digestive issues, irregular periods. If you're experiencing any of these things, then we know we're having a loss of function. And when we're in that pocket, I think we always want to start with a focus purely on functional movement that's providing energy. So that would be okay for a period of healing, kind of like putting a cast on an ankle, like 4 to 6 weeks. We're just going to focus on functional movement. So again, getting those 7 to 10,000 steps in every day, maybe hitting the mat for some yoga or stretching 3 times a week. And that is where we would start, I think. But if you are doing well, but you're just noticing these things, I think I think it's always time to explore some other types of fitness modalities because there's so many out there. I mean, you're going to get beautiful benefits from like Pilates, and there certainly is some intense yoga, or you can lift weights. It might just be we need to make sure it's with our cycle. So the last piece of that I'd like to say is we always want to recognize what our body is saying. If you're reaching a part of your month and you're feeling that drain, or you're feeling really tight in your body, that's your body saying, okay, I need less today, not every day, but today I need less. If you wake up and you're just feeling on fire, go for it and see how that goes for you. But just listen to what your body is saying. And to put some structures that for me, I go through like one in the few days before I'm supposed to have a period and the first few days of my period, I always take off and just do yoga and walking. I think that that's a high demand time in our body. So I take that time off and it just nourishes really well that way. And I go through cycles. So I'm not doing like a weightlifting program all year long. Maybe twice a year, I'm focused in for 3 months on weights. And in that time, I'm like 3 days weights, 1 day yoga, 2 days weights, 1 day yoga. Like we're really breaking it up and kind of well rounding out the body.
Okay. Question for you, because you keep mentioning listening to our body. And this is something I also recommend people do. But I think you and I both, because of what we do for a living, we tend to be able to listen to our body. We have that constant communication. What do you tell these women who there's a disconnect for whatever reason? Maybe they're, dealing with some past trauma or some this diet culture where they just really struggle to hear what their body is saying. How can they get to where they're able to listen?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important question, right? It's because like anything, it's a practice. It doesn't just happen, automatically. It's a habit we have to put into place, and then it does become second nature. But first and foremost, I mean, this is why you and I have careers, because if you can't do for yourself, get help. Get help to do these things. Have someone guide you and coach you through those things. That's why, we're here and why we can make a difference. And this is what we specialize in. And I mean, I, for one, if I remember thinking, if I don't know these things, how on earth is anyone else going to know these things? Because this is what I do. Like I help women in their health. So one, I'm like, reach out, get in any way, find someone you resonate with and get in their world. And, whether it's like just getting their freebie or their email list to remind you or join their membership or work with them one-on-one, whatever might fit your needs and budget. But I'd say as a personal, like if tactic on your own, you got to just do the work and pay attention. So it's like every day, setting an alarm and just doing a check-in and teaching yourself to start to recognize like, oh, I'm tired. And our initial reaction might be to reach for caffeine or sugar. but why am I tired? Sure, maybe you keep reaching for the caffeine and sugar, but let's understand why I'm feeling that way. And when we know why, oh, I didn't sleep very well last night. Well, why didn't I sleep very well last night? Oh, well, I stayed up too late on my phone. Or if it was a one-off thing, so be it, that your kiddo was sick or the dog was up sick or who knows. But it's really bringing that piece back. And I listened to one of your podcasts that I loved recently around, like, it was a movement bite around pelvic floor health.
Mhm.
And like, what you talked about is like, if you're leaking urine, like, that's an indication something needs help. So if we don't have energy to get through the day, there's a light for you, an indication, like the answer is not, yes, we can have quick fixes and like put on a pad so we're not leaking urine or grab a coffee, but it's not sustainable long term because whatever function is lost at this point will only get worse unless we heal it. And we're at this beautiful, knowledgeable wisdom age now where we know this. And the reserve is low. So loss of function means further loss of function means disease. And that's what we're all trying to avoid if we're, focused on our health.
Well, and I think that what has happened is so many of us deal with these things that we think this is normal, that this is, oh, this is just you're getting older.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something I always like to challenge, like change the lens on how you think you should feel. We see people thriving and feeling great in life. We see a lot of people who aren't. But I believe that no, we're not going to necessarily have the same motor and engine that we did in our 20s. But if we take care of the maintenance of our body like we would a car, then we're going to last a lot longer. And if we run into a situation where we are, randomly diagnosed with something, at least our body's ready, like, and in the best shape to handle it. And I think that's a really important piece that motivates me anyway at this age is like, we can't always control what might come down the pipeline, whether it's a major stress in your life or whether you get a terrible diagnosis, but you can control the state that you are and how you're prepared for it at that time. And that's where health matters.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you say, you want to be strong for that situation if you do end up in that situation.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
it's almost this idea of, and I really want to push women on this is, this idea of getting ahead of the game. Like make sure you're doing your oil changes and like if we wait until there's symptoms, there's already loss of function. So even if you're listening to this and you're not struggling with anything or don't think you're struggling with anything, we still need to make sure we have a good, healthy routine because that's what's going to keep us around and thriving long term.
Perfect. I know, I'm sure you see this information out there. I feel like it's all over the internet right now, is like how women need to be really strong and we need to be working out, lifting heavy weights and all of that. But I also enjoyed hearing from you that this may not be the time, and that depending on where you are, with say perimenopause or whatever, you may need to take a little bit of time, and you were talking about cycle syncing to help with this. And I really liked how you said 3 months, like where you might not do heavy weights for a period of time or strength training for a period of time, and then you bring it in for a few months. Can you talk to me about that a little bit, kind of
Yeah,
explain your thoughts around this?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, we know that, building muscle is so great for our bone density. I like to think of it as like you're wrapping your body in armor for the war that is life. Like, so I think it is a beautiful thing. It also is like what I like to call a long-term investment, right? Like so because you have to kind of borrow money, you got to borrow energy to make this energy. So absolutely, if you're in this pocket in life, because I always think, Courtney, it would be amazing if we could all like go to the Biggest Loser campus or go to like a 6 month yoga retreat and have nothing else but this to focus on. But that's just not our reality. We
Right.
have all these other drawdowns on the energy impacting us at all times. The body juggles a lot. So when we think about how to manage this time in our life, again, we really have to check in like, again, well, how am I feeling? And what I love to do is take a look even at my year and think, okay, What are the most important things in my life? Well, health, relationships, career, right? These are often our biggest things. So you can divide your year up in like 3 4 month blocks or 4 3 month blocks and devote, one block to each one of these goals and know that you're making progress. And in your health goal, if we want to take a look at, okay, well, where am I at and where am I wanting to go? If I'm dealing with an imbalance, like if I'm suffering, we have to go through a healing period. So there's got to be this period of, like I was saying before, it's almost like you break your ankle, you know, we can see it so tangibly. So we wrap it up with a cast, because if you didn't, you're walking around and it's getting worse and it's causing other issues and we're inflaming everything. So we
Right.
wrap it up, but we don't see our hormones are a bit more like mental health. We don't see our hormones that same way.
Mhm.
When the cast comes off, we everybody wants to get back to the gym, but or to running, but we need to go to physio. We got to make sure we get full range of motion. So we need to spend a slower period of time to build up to this point. And the goal, I think, in this healing phase or this healing to thrive phase is when we get to the time when we're able to retrain for the marathon or the whatever it is that we're going for, maybe it's putting on muscle or burning fat, we want to do it in line with our hormone rhythm. Because
Mhm.
if we're working against it, then we're drawing down on the energy. Whereas if we're working with it, it's like hopping on a lazy river and it's doing all the work for us. So that's where I think the value of cycle syncing can really come in this pocket. And then if you drive that home for 3 4 months a year, then you can just maintain what you're doing and you're still getting beautiful progress in your body without needing to spend more time and energy on your health.
I love it. And I enjoy that you also said, the three aspects of your health, your relationships, and what was the other one?
Your
The
career.
Your career. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made me think about, like, so it doesn't mean we have to do all of it all of the time. We
No.
can focus on one for a period of time. It's also like when you think about when after having children, how it's like this trying to find balance. And people will say over and over again, like, that this isn't the time to find balance. You can't balance it. You
Yeah.
have to, not every day is going to be balanced. You
Yeah.
have to look at it more like this period of time and try to find balance within a period of time. Is that how
Yes.
you feel, like, for fitness? Do you feel that way for fitness as well? Or because you hear that we need to be working out every day or
Mm,
movement every day. So
every day.
what do
Yeah.
you feel, just personally, what do you feel is like the best way?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's a great question. I feel like functional movement is required for optimal health. So there should always, always, always be a functional movement part of your day. But again, if you have a dog, the dog's got to be walked at least twice a day. So there's a lot of it right there. We add in again some yoga and stretching, and you're there at that functional piece.
Mhm.
When we have a goal beyond that, what I like to call fitness for luxury bodies, right? You're like, oh, okay, well, because the truth is, for anyone listening, like you should be able to burn pretty much the most amount of fat that you need to burn through nutrition and functional movement. When we start adding on fitness for, because nobody's out anymore, like working the farm the same way. We don't naturally have these muscles, right? The same way. So when
Right.
we're out there, it's a hobby piece or a very focused piece. So I do think that, we're kind of playing in this Olympic arena, and we, especially as women, are expecting these Olympic levels of output. So it's like, oh well, I'm working out every day and I'm like peaking in my career and I'm the best mom ever and all these things. But Olympians know that along with the work effort they put in, they also have to have the downtime. They have to have massage and the perfect nutrition and the off days and the cross training. And we need that too if we're going to expect this peak performance. So when it comes to fitness specifically, if you're like, okay, well, the goal is to put on muscle because we know that is really good for, my body, my future. When is there a good time in this year when I have, 3 months to allocate to making this an upper top priority in my life? Because if when you go lifting weights, like I am hungrier when I lift weights. I am more
Mhm.
tired and I need both of those things, which means I
Right.
got to spend more time sleeping and more time preparing better quality food and more time saying no to other things. So it has to be something that slides up your scale that you're like, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm just focused on this piece. Again, we don't have to be, baby grandmas and in bed every night at 9:30. But we do need to recognize like what's my goal and what are the tasks it takes to get there. And muscle development, when it's not a regular part of our everyday life of like, again, lifting and, is it takes work and it
Mhm.
requires energy. And that's going to be a demand on you. So you want to pick a time when you have a little bit more wiggle room for it. But in the meantime, we still need functional movement. If you're not getting 7 to 10,000 steps in a day, you're not supporting your health.
Most definitely, I
How do you feel
agree.
about that? Okay,
I mean, I
good.
would say that is one thing that I feel like, and I've noticed for myself, because of what I do currently, one being the podcast, one being homeschooling my daughter, I don't move like I used to. And I
Mhm.
would say for women, that is one of the most important things to do is just start walking
Yeah,
more. Just walk.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's and even with our parents at this age, like, that's what I've been saying. It's like walk, and they've been really great. Now I'm like, now you need to stretch. Like you need to touch your toes and get up off the floor and turn your neck to check your blind spot. Like we need to make sure these things are happening.
Yes,
And
yes. And that's something that I'm always talking about is how we we have outsourced so much of our movement to
yes,
something else, like that, like you said, just checking it. We don't even check our blind spot because we can look at our mirrors and our mirrors tell us everything. It's like,
our backup camera.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, we can't even rotate. We can't turn our body anymore because of, we've got the backup cameras and it's just
Yeah.
crazy.
That's a really good point. It's like it's beautiful that we have these conveniences and we still have to make sure that so then we have to actually make these things a practice because they're now not a daily part of our life.
Right.
Being able to, yeah, get up off the ground and yeah, check that turn around and have full rotation in our hips. We're all, I don't know about you, but I might love fitness, but I sit all day and I talk to people. So I got to move and like rotate. Otherwise I get stiff and tight and don't even realize
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Can you tell me what is one thing that you found to be very maybe something you didn't expect to happen in this midlife area?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I mean, there's of course, I don't think I expected it at all, which is always a really interesting piece. It's like you hear about menopause, but I didn't know what perimenopause. I had no idea that it's like I thought it's like, oh, I'm going to be 48, 49, 50, and all of a sudden I might get hot and cranky and gain a bit of weight and then it'll be over. Like this is what we're told, right? I
Right,
actually
yeah.
remember
It's
watching it
just
like
going
a
to go away and like
yeah, and then I just stopped getting my period. Woohoo.
yeah.
Like, I didn't really, we aren't told any of these things. So I think one, just understanding that this is a workload. And of course, like, there's a lot of like random symptoms I wouldn't expect. I would say I didn't understand or expect how connected it was to the rest of my body. So again, just because I'm having hormonal issues doesn't mean I have issues producing hormones. And I think that's really important for women to know because I absolutely believe in like bioidenticals and HRT. Like we shouldn't have to suffer, but we want to make sure that the liver is metabolizing things. Otherwise, what's the point? And that the cells can take it in. Otherwise, what's the point? But I would say the biggest thing that I didn't know that I am so grateful to know, and I'm still, I think, wrapping my head around, Courtney, is the way that the shifting of these hormones and this phase of life impacts our brain. And that is simply that it's specific. The science behind it is that it impacts the hippocampus and amygdala of our brain, which are our memory encoders and retrievers. So oftentimes and they're very sensitive to our main sex hormones. So we can start to recognize that we're more irritated by things, more bothered by things. People talk about meno rage and stuff like that. I think a better lens on this is recognizing that from puberty until now, every month we've had estrogen, which is like rose colored glasses, coming on kind of like hormonally hacking us, right? Like taking us over so that we'll be amenable to procreate, right? So it's like these estrogen glasses come on and we're like, oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. And then we're like, yeah, okay, I like you enough to have sex with you or whatever. You know what I mean? We get this beautiful hormonal like thing on so that we do that and so that we prioritize our children above us so that they survive. That's a lot of what estrogen does. And as that declines in this area, I think we often think, oh, I'm getting older, I'm shriveling up. No, it means we're actually able to access without being hormonally hijacked who we are and what we want. And I think that's really powerful because yeah, you might be extra annoyed that the dishes are in the sink again, but you're annoyed because nobody's listening to you. Like there's no, like there's no respect. So it's a boundary, it's a needs issue, right? And we get to actually get to that point instead of like you're annoyed today, but then tomorrow you're like, oh, never mind, I'll just do it for you, right? Like this is the gift of perimenopause and menopause for women. Like I really think so, is that we finally get to kind of think a little bit more like men because no one's coming along being like, let's put these glasses on you and tell you everything's going to be okay. And that's what our hormones have done for us. And thank goodness, because now we can, keep the circle of life going. But it's important, I think, to see it for what it is and not for the fact that we're getting older. We have a beautiful opportunity here to thrive, but we got to know ourselves first.
I love that. I'm laughing though, just because like we can appreciate it, but I don't know if everybody in our house appreciates the response. I said something the other day to my husband about just kind of like, like at this point, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to make the decision for myself. I'm no longer making the decision for everybody else in the house. And he was like, what's that supposed to mean? I was like, I'm just tired of, like I don't want to have to cover up if someone doesn't want to do something, like this, I want to do it. So I'm going to do it. And if you don't want to do it, then just.
Yeah. And it's not a big deal because I don't want you to come if you don't want to come anyway, because that won't be fun. Yeah.
So it's just funny that you said that because I'm like, yes, we might enjoy it because we're finally speaking up for ourselves.
Yes.
But the people in our household might be like a little taken aback.
Well, and they will, right? Anytime you put a boundary where one should have been but isn't, it's always going to rub someone who didn't have that boundary. They're going to be like, what? They're going to push on it a little. I think that's normal. And I think when we're genuinely able to access who we are and what we want and set those boundaries and needs, that allows our relationships to get stronger. So even though it's an uncomfortable little blip of like, wait a second, like you're not going to just smooth this over for me, you're not going to do everything for me, or then they start to learn to do things for themselves, or they learn it's okay for them to go and do their own thing while you do yours, or whatever the situation is. But right. So yes, there's always short-term pain before long-term gain. But isn't that the story of everything in life?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing I've learned anyway, that I didn't expect, was my ability to finally put down the people pleasing, to put down prioritizing everyone else over myself and be like, wait a second, I don't want to do this, so I'm just not going to today. You do it.
Yeah. Can you tell everyone where they can find you and learn more from you?
Thank you, Courtney. Thanks for this conversation. It's been great. Yes, I have a podcast as well called the Period Whisperer Podcast, where I talk and interview and entirely on really this transition and what we expect, what's going on, how to heal, real steps, things like that. That's always a great place. So anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can come hang out with me on Instagram at Bria_period_whisperer if you like it there. And let's reach out and connect, because I think the more we normalize this and the more we talk about it, the better we feel.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for this conversation.
Thank you, Courtney, for what you do and how you show up for women. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found something to take away to help you practice healthier habits, move more, or handle the midlife and aging with grace. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or leave us a review to help us reach more moms just like you. Head to movingthroughmidlife.com to join the free community or learn how you can move more and feel better in your daily life.